What's up, everyone? This will be a sound sign video, okay? I will go through the process of just like starting a sound from scratch, trying to turn that into something cool, trying to make some patterns, trying to get some ideas down. I will try to not edit it too much, basically, so you guys can see the whole process behind me just going through a lot of different ideas, I guess. Trying to make like the most insane stuff ever, but I can, at the end, sound sign in production, for me, it's knowing how to fix most of the issues instead of just like being like an expert. Trying stuff, figuring it out, fixing stuff, trying again, repeating, polishing stuff, resampling, just trying again, a bunch of like back and forth when it comes to making sounds. So I have some basic drums here. Maybe I change them later. We can see if we need to change them and change to kick clap or something different. One thing that I would like to do with the cymbals is basically this, just pretty much like cut the end of the cymbal like that. So instead of just having something like this just playing all the time, I would do something like this. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't make up any difference. But let's use it like this. And track delay. Track delay, it's pretty important because at the end, in the process of just like making all these patterns with our bases and stuff like that, we probably need to adjust the cymbals just to make them flow accordingly with whatever bass we have. So we can do something like this, and you'll like instantly notice the difference when you... Maybe that's too much, but sometimes it works. So I'm just gonna do something like this. Okay, and now we can start with sound sign. Basic thought process behind sound signing. Let me just do this. You know that I always use this thing to kind of like just explain things. I think it's easier to understand in general. So we have our sound, right? And this is not meant to be like the way that you should be doing sound design. I think this is like a basic structure that I use in order to have some sort of process or just like a structure when I'm making sounds, because at the end, maybe the sounds that I'm trying to go for are not the same that you try to go for. So it's at the end, you can change a lot of different things in this structure and just make it your own, pretty much. So we'll have it like this: sub, mids, highs. So I really like the idea of like splitting frequencies, or just like being able to change different frequency ranges separately. I think that's powerful. And this will go into post process. Okay. So what am I looking in the post process area? I'm looking for three main things, and these will be space. This will be distortion and compression. Okay. The order of these effects, it's not like it's supposed to be like first, second, and third. You could be using, I don't know, distortion first, then compression, then space, or space, distortion, compression, whatever you want to do. Of course, they will give you different results based on the order of these effects, because this is basically, Ableton is like parallel. I mean serial effects. So if you do something like, I don't know, compress room, and then you do compression, it's gonna be like this first, and then this is the next one, right? So let me just clean that up. And so this will be like the most basic starting point that we can have. And the thing is, like, you can do this in many different ways, because if you use Serum, let's go to Serum and let's try to explain that with this thing. So we're gonna do Serum. And if you think about these layers that I'm talking about, we can have, let's say the mid layer will be something like, I don't know, FM from B, right? Super basic way to make sounds in Serum. Something like this. So this could be our mid layer, and then you can use the sub if you want, and then the noise, right? So you would have all these pretty much like layers. Of course, I'm not going and just doing these right now, but you can take the time to just work with these and just make some sounds. You can change these at any time. But what if you want to And of course, if you go to the post process, you have distortion, compression. If you want to use a space, you can use delay, chorus, reverb, a lot of these effects, right? But now you can also do this with samples, because let me just add different channels and do it like this. And this will be the post process group, right? So if you want to grab something like this for the sub, you can use that. I'm gonna set this to D. So we have the sub, and mids could be anything. I have a bunch of these layers that I like tonal stuff. Let's say this is our mid layer, right? I'm not gonna go in depth with sunshine yet. I'm just explaining this kind of like structure, and then we can just hop and make some cool sounds. So when I'm talking about mid layer, this is what I'm looking for, like some sort of tone, some sort of like main kind of like character for that sound, because sub will give you energy, and the high end will give you brightness and like a lot of different things. But the main idea or the main tone from the sound is this layer. So it's important that we get it right. And then highs, you can use literally anything for this. Why not would be the most basic example. So let's say you want something like this, and this will be some sort of like one shot, right? So then you need to kind of like make everything look nice, something like this, right? It's super unbalanced, right? This will be kind of like the main layers that I talked about. And then post-process, okay? Let's try to just add some post-process to this so we can see how these start to kind of like become just one thing. Because I feel like the post-process is what at the end makes the sound just one thing instead of just like being like 3 separate layers. So space, I'm a big fan of Compress Room. This is stock Ableton. Let's try OTT, but honestly, I really don't use it that much, but sometimes it works. So we have a space, right? We have our compression, compression, and distortion. And you can use anything for this. This is the cool part. If you want to use Serum for this, you can use Serum. If you want to use it instead of Compress Room, you want to use delay or chorus or convolvers. If you want, do it. If you want to use G-clip, if you want to use I don't know, different compressor, just do it. I don't know, even glue compressor if you want. Distortion, if you want to use saturator, if you want to use Trash 2, if you want to use Saturn, if you want to use, I don't know, Serum effects, just do it. Do you use whatever you want for this? That's the cool part. And it's not that you need just 3 effects. This could be like, you can have a lot more. If you want to add, for example, distortion with saturator and then wave shaper or something like that, you can do it. It's not that you need to just do one of these and that's it. But this will be our starting point. So now let's take a listen. Okay, so I talked about the order of the effects, and this is pretty important. And now you can see that I have the space first before compression. And OTT is pretty heavy with compression, so it's gonna make all these little tails and signal pretty loud and pretty compressed. So if we move it here, for example, now it's just a little bit different, just because we're getting that space after the compression. So some things to keep in mind, or if we do distortion first, we're gonna be distorting the signal before any of these effects do anything to the signal. So let me just adjust here a little bit. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of OTT anymore, but we can still use it. Distortion space, maybe I want to do something like this. Cool thing about just doing something like this with OTT is that you can go insane with distortion, because think about this, it's gonna distort the signal a lot, but OTT is gonna bring it down regardless of the amount of distortion that you're using. But it would be different if you do this. It's gonna get way louder. But depending on what you want to achieve with the sound, I feel like this works. Maybe something like this, but look at this now. So this will be our basic post-process. Already giving me like a different result. It's making everything sound a little bit more glued together, I guess. But we can just keep going with this, because now it's like, okay, we have our 3 kind of like main frequencies, then we have our main effects. Okay. The thing is, like, now we can just keep going and keep going in depth with each of these, because let's say the sub is maybe a little bit weak. Maybe you can add something else. Let's try, I don't know, amp. if you want. Maybe that's a little bit more interesting. Mids, what we can do with this one? We can change it. We can EQ it a little bit more. We can add effects, maybe more space, because I don't know, we want to do that. Change the pitch. We can even do something like that, super quick. And maybe why not? We can adjust, because the shape of each of these is also pretty important. It's not the same if you do something like with all that just playing, or just doing something like this, where this is like this. You know, shape is pretty important, and it's one of those things that it's kind of like this refining process, where you're like, okay, maybe this should be like this, and maybe like this, and this one should be just a little bit shorter, you know, and that makes a big difference at the end. So we can just work with something like this for now. But now we have our basic starting point for the sound design process. Okay, now we can just keep going with, for example, some of the things that I would do would be